Naruto exclusive videos lemon come out on my boosty. You can watch and subscribe. Link in the description, like the video and write a comment, enjoy watching. Description: it is clear to everyone that Naruto cannot live without adventures. But life after the war turned out in such a way that the famous blonde had to gather dust, gnawing on the granite of science, trampling her way to her dream. Boredom. True, it turned out that adventures also cannot live without Naruto. Take this, sign for it. The quest called Fall on Tobirama's Head begins. And in this set with Tobirama there are also Hashirama and Madara. Now it will definitely not be boring. Chapter 34. Naruto, limping on her right leg, dragged the corpse of the head of the Spider Clan behind her. It was impossible to prevent the attack without completely destroying the enemy. Dohatsutin ceased to operate either at the request of the user who activated it, or due to his death. They did not want to solve the problem peacefully, although Hashirama, contrary to the words of Tobirama and Madara, offered to disperse peacefully. Senju Sr., in the name of peace and his optimism, was ready to turn a blind eye to their deception and aggression. The spiders refused, thereby incurring the wrath of Senju and Uchiha. Well, and one Uzumaki. I told you so, Naruto, dragging the corpse of the main villain for everyone to see, stopped at the edge of the forest, where Hashirama, Madara and Tobirama were sitting gloomy and tense. There were several more corpses lying next to the Senju and Uchiha brothers. Tobirama, looking sideways at her, only sighed heavily and took a swig from the clay gourd in which his brother carried sake. Hashirama's love of drinking today saved his nervous system from a complete collapse. Here you are kicking the lifeless body. Naruto plopped down tiredly on the uprooted tree. Madara stood up, approaching the dead man. But she said so it seemed that he addressed this phrase to the corpse, but Tobirama twitched nervously. What did she say? Hashirama perked up, turning his gaze to Naruto. His whole appearance radiated incomprehension. Nothing interesting, Tobirama muttered through tightly clenched teeth, lowering his gaze to his feet. It doesn't matter anymore. Glancing at the dejected Senju Jr., Naruto waved her off, feeling guilty. Still, he should have kept his mouth shut and not reproached him. Even if he was asking for comments for his indifference. He wanted the best. Tobirama simply couldn't trust her like he could trust himself. Just as he couldn't trust Tsuchigumo. He needed to figure out who was worthy of his trust in this situation. Tobirama lived by his mind, while Naruto lived by his heart. At least it wasn't a surprise, Madara said, taking out Kama from the mounts on his back. A slight wave of his hand, and the corpse of the head of the Tsuchigumo clan became a head shorter. Madara! What are you doing? Hashirama exclaimed, looking at his friend with wide eyes. But Naruto and Tobirama looked at Madara in surprise for another reason. Uchiha had just justified Tobirama's excessive paranoia with one remark. Give me the sealing scroll. Uchiha bent down, picked up the severed head by the hair, and extended his free hand to Hashirama. Why? Senju Sr. took a step back. I'll send a message to the Tsuchigumo clan not to meddle in Konoha anymore. Madara nevertheless condescended to explain. That's undiplomatic. Senju objected, showing that he was not inclined to indulge his comrade's radical and bloodthirsty decisions. But it's illustrative, Uchiha retorted, his dark eyes flashing menacingly. Was it diplomatic to attack Konoha? Tobirama cut in, measuring his brother with a frown. This time, people suffered. If it weren't for the Susanoo Uchiha, then the number of victims would have increased many times. With this message we can run into their revenge, Hashirama reasoned. Then I will go to them in order to destroy them, so that they do not even think of revenge. Give me the scroll. Madara's voice could cut steel itself. Naruto's intonations gave him goosebumps. Madara knew how to be intimidating. And how will we be better than them? Shuddering from Madara's bloodlust spreading through the air, Naruto asked sadly, watching Shigero's severed head dangle. And it was sad because some part of her soul supported Madara's idea. If it were not for the accident with the niece of this arrogant man, the consequences would have been catastrophic. Hashirama sent Naruto an approving smile, seeing a like-minded person in her. In that, unlike them, We will breathe, and Naruto could not argue with him. And I didn't want to. These, by destroying the Uchiha and Senju, would have destroyed other people. Other clans. Civilians who have nothing to do with the cruel and bloody world of shinobi. Just give him the scroll, Hashirama, Tobirama said reluctantly. Fear will either restrain them or push them to try again. Fortunately, it will be more difficult to attack a second time. This attack will serve as a lesson to us. We will strengthen the borders of the village. We will create patrols. A shelter for civilians is needed, Tobirama interrupted the flow of ideas. Naruto. Okay, Hashirama gave in and handed Madara the sealing scroll, having first taken out his dinner from it. Shall we have a snack? Mito cooked, and at the mention of his wife, Hashirama beamed, smiling tenderly at the bamboo dishes. Tobirama sighed heavily. His brother was too soft for a true shinobi. This harsh world was not worthy of Hashirama's big and kind heart. Fool, instead of gratitude, but nevertheless good-naturedly responded Madara, accepting the scroll. Perhaps I'll pass. She did not smile at eating Hashirama's yesterday's dinner for breakfast in the midst of a company of corpses. Moreover, she was tired. So much so that she was too lazy to even chew. And she wanted to eat. I want to sleep, so I'll go home, Uzumaki yawned widely. Yesterday and tonight were terrible and took all the strength out of her. Getting up from her seat, she sadly trudged towards Konoha, dragging her leg. But before she had even taken 10 steps, she felt the weight of a man's hand on her shoulder. This made her stop and raise her head to the one who was now next to her. Senju Tobirama silently put his arm around her shoulders. Naruto noisily sniffed the air, starting to get irritated. And the anger that arose inside her was a means of replacing the embarrassment and awkwardness that had made themselves known in his presence in the first place. The Flying Thunder God, Tobirama said without even deigning to look at her, moving into the apartment with her. And as soon as her feet touched the floor, Tobirama was gone. All that was left for Uzumaki was to stare at the void in bewilderment. She was awakened by an insistent knock on the door. Reluctantly getting out of bed, sleepily stumbling over what used to be furniture, Naruto walked to the door. Opening it slightly, she leaned her eye against the thin crack, looking out to see who had come to her. There were 3 boys standing on the other side. Her sleepy brain could barely identify one of them as Kagami. Uchiha. The other 2 were unfamiliar to her. What do you want, little one? She asked hoarsely, opening the door wider. We were sent to help you clean up. The little Uchiha muttered discontentedly, crossing his arms over his chest. He looked as if he had been offered to eat worms instead of helping Naruto. Why? Naruto yawned sweetly. Mission. One of the boys expressed similar emotions. Like, what kind of nonsense is this, helping some adult clean up? Can't you do it yourself? The only thing keeping him here was that it was an order from above. And orders, as a rule, are not discussed. Mission? The sleepy Uzumaki asked again. Well then, come in. Kagami gave his verdict, staring at the corpse in the middle of the destroyed apartment. The body lay in a caked pool of blood, staring blankly at one point. Flies buzzed and danced over the post-mortem wound, landing on the edges of the cut, then taking off again. If Naruto had slept another day, her would-be killer would have begun to rot. But apparently the fact of his presence in her apartment did not bother him much. Why is that? Naruto ran her fingers through her tangled hair, trying to comb it as she went. Kagami, you can't talk to adults like that. The third boy hissed at him, giving the Uchiha a displeased look, and then turned his expectant gaze to Naruto. But there was no reprimand for rudeness. Her intelligence is lower than ours, so it's possible. The sarcasm in the little Uchiha's voice was off the charts. You were clearly planted with the Uchiha, Uzumaki muttered under her breath, taking out fresh clothes. Having fun. And she disappeared into the bathroom. What are your names? Uzumaki joined the children as they scrubbed the dried blood off the floor. The larger debris, including the dead body of a Tsuchigumo shinobi, had been cleared away while she was taking a shower. Danzo Shimura. A more gloomy and dissatisfied boy introduced himself. And you, apparently, are Sarutobi. Hiruzen, Naruto turned her curious gaze to the third boy, who looked the most adequate and peace-loving. Old Man Third, the power-hungry jerk Danzo, and the future right hand of the second Kagami were cleaning her apartment. Shinobi, who are destined to become the strongest, are now washing her floors here, armed with brushes, detergent, and a bucket of water. Yes, Hiruzen was slightly surprised that Naruto knew his name, but he considered it improper to ask where from. Naruto. Uzumaki. She introduced herself. Her lips spread into a smile on their own. Laughter tickled her chest from the inside. The third Hokage and the head of Root were at her beck and call. The thought lodged in her head that if it were up to her, Shimura would weed the beds until the end of time. Naruto, what about the argument? Kagami suddenly perked up, as if he felt that Naruto's thoughts had turned to the long-suffering beds. You and Tobirama never finished the sparring. And as soon as the little Uchiha mentioned the younger Senju, Naruto immediately snapped. Blood instantly rushed to her cheeks, a fire flared up in her stomach, and her brain mockingly threw her the memory of the kiss. And Uzumaki dropped out of life, mentally plunging into the night of the attack. But we need to finish it. It was unclear who would win, Kagami continued. He was now very interested in who would win, because having witnessed their sparring, it dawned on him that Naruto was not much weaker than Senju Jr. How is it not clear? Tobirama-sama is stronger than this one. He put in his 2 cents. Danzo in such a tone, as if Kagami was talking nonsense and everything was crystal clear. Only Madara and Hashirama were stronger than Tobirama. And some girl was definitely not fit to hold a candle to him. Danzo, you just didn't see how she created a combination with Tobirama's water technique using the wind technique, thereby redirecting its action, Kagami wailed admiringly. His eyes were feverishly shining. You yourself said that she has the intelligence of a carp, Shimura retorted. Both boys, forgetting that they needed to wipe off the blood, put the brushes aside and entered into an argument. Only Sarutobi diligently wiped off the blood stain. Danzo, you're slandering. He didn't say anything about the carp. Hiruzen also entered the argument, glancing sideways at Naruto in anticipation of what would happen to them all for insulting her mental abilities. In life, she's stupid, but in battle, she mastered a water dragon, riding on its back like a horse. And then she cloned herself. Not an illusion, I answer. 50. And then a ball of compressed chakra appeared in each hand and she broke his jutsu. Kagami chattered, pouring out like a nightingale, retelling her fight with Tobirama to his comrades. Physical clones are impossible, Danzo snorted skeptically. It was genjutsu. I tell you, not genjutsu. I swear by the Sharingans. The Uchiha flared up, starting to get angry. Maybe her genjutsu is better than your ability to recognize mirages. And Tobirama-sama is an excellent master of genjutsu. He could have sent a powerful illusion so that she would think that victory was hers. Shimura showered her with counterarguments. Naruto bowed her head lower and lower, trembling slightly. Of all that was happening outside her head, she only caught the name Tobirama. As luck would have it, when his name was mentioned, very embarrassing episodes popped up before her eyes. In her memories, she reached the moment when she responded to Tobirama's kiss. Clenching her hands into fists, she tried to control herself, but nothing helped. Neither Kagami's loud chatter, nor Shimura's voice full of skepticism. That morning, she had neither the strength nor the desire to think about the consequences of the night before the attack. She only had enough strength to wash and change her clothes. That's all. But now, having rested, she had the strength, time, and opportunity to think about what had happened. All she had to do was remind her of Senju. And voila, the process of analyzing what had happened was launched. And everything suddenly became so confusing and complicated that it was time to hang myself. Guys, calm down. Hiruzen had to stand between Shimura and Uchiha. Both boys were already on their feet, ready to get into a fight. Naruto-san is not happy with your discussion. Sarutobi watched her with apprehension, trying to interpret her reaction. He took the trembling for irritation, and the silence for a bad sign. I'll kill him, Naruto hissed, abruptly straightened up, taking a sitting position. Kagami and Danzo cautiously took 2 steps back. A murderous key floated from Naruto around the apartment. Me or him? The pale Uchiha asked in a muffled voice, remembering her strength. It seemed they had angered her after all. Tobirama, Naruto explained, and then came to her senses. 3 pairs of eyes looked at her in horror. This made her smile guiltily, nervously scratching the back of her head. Sorry for scaring you. We won't forgive you, the Uchiha immediately found himself. Only if you show the technique that makes clones that aren't illusionary. Kagami dictated the terms, ready to do anything to prove to the skeptical Danzo that clones could be real. Kagami, Hiruzen was clearly the voice of conscience and righteousness in this company. That's not accepted. You mean the shadow clone technique? She was no longer amazed by the Uchiha's impudence. Well, definitely a foundling. Real Uchiha behave like arrogant snobs from childhood and do not stoop to the level of unimpressive blackmail. It was genjutsu. Danzo insisted on his point of view. I won't show you, she said shortly, picked up the brush again and began scrubbing the floor with tripled effort. Her imagination threw her into the image of her scrubbing not the floor with this hard brush, but someone's pale face. And that made it a little easier. Show me! Well, show me, Kagami whined, not taking no for an answer. Scrub the floors, don't scratch with your tongue. And you too, Danzo. This is a mission, teamwork and all that. She glared meaningfully at Shimura, who was in no hurry to get back to work. Hiruzen, unlike all of them, followed her example as soon as she returned to scrubbing the stain. Nonsense, and with an air as if he didn't have to do this, but was doing her a favor, Shimura took up the brush, dropped to his knees, and without much enthusiasm began to work. Show me, show me, show me, Kagami continued like a wind-up man, also taking up the brush. Fortunately, having his hands busy didn't mean that he had to close his mouth. Show me. I won't show you, Uzumaki was seething. The focus of her anger shifted to the impudent Uchiha. She wanted to strangle him, regardless of the fact that he was still small. A horror, not a child. Show me, show me, show me, he didn't give up. Go to Tobirama. He invented Shadow Clone. Let him show you and explain to you 3 the principle of this jutsu. Why are you picking on me? Naruto freaked out. Him? Kagami blinked stupidly. You used it. I spied on the process of its creation, so I quickly learned it. Naruto furiously wiped the stain, feeling a bead of sweat roll down her forehead from the effort. Then that explains a lot. Tobirama is a genius. Okay. Stop. Then how did you know this jutsu? Kagami's meticulousness was on your level and threatened to break the dam of Uzumaki's patience. So you stole it. A moment later, the Uchiha squealed with a guess. Holy Kami, Naruto begged. Her eye twitched. Yes. She stole the technique. But it was not the reminder of the theft of the forbidden scroll that infuriated her, but the fact that the kid mentioned Senju Jr. again, and in a positive way at that. A moment, and Kagami received a good slap. His jaw dropped. Naruto, with a sense of duty accomplished, began cleaning again. Hey! I bit my tongue. One small, insulted Uchiha was indignant. His teeth were indeed stained with blood. Hiruzen looked at his comrade. He had jumped too much. And Shimura Danzo did not hide his obvious gloating. It's a pity he didn't bite off. Uzumaki complained and gave Shimura a weaker slap. As a preventative measure. Work better. And how could Kakashi cope with 3 little brats? Less than half an hour had passed in the company of these kids, and he already wanted to bury them. Except for Hiruzen. And after the preventative slaps on the back of the head, silence reigned. All that was heard was the diligent sniffling and the brushes rubbing against the wooden floor. Naruto sighed with relief. Without unnecessary mentions of Tobirama, she did not return to him in her thoughts. And the monotonous and tedious work distracted her from dangerous thoughts. Grace had come. Chapter 35. Naruto looked in horror at the last coin, lying alone at the bottom of the canvas bag. Her stomach no longer rumbled pitifully from this picture, but moaned angrily, emitting growling sounds like Kurama. The forced diet was not doing her any good. The money had predictably run out. The feeling of hunger did not leave her for a second. The regret of her own decision to move away from Madara, where she was fed as if she were going to slaughter, was becoming immense. All her problems would be solved by work. But she was not assigned missions. It was terribly awkward to show herself to Tobirama, and she had to ask him directly for a mission. The bureaucratic apparatus was not established, therefore, Tobirama was alone for everyone in the residence, while the entertainers were doing what seemed to be necessary, but still a little bit wrong. Hashirama was establishing affairs with the hospital, and Madara was maintaining order on the streets. Part of her understood that sooner or later they were destined to cross paths. Better later, a cowardly voice inside insisted. But there was nothing to be done. Starvation was more terrible than the all-consuming awkwardness and embarrassment. The main thing is to pretend that nothing happened. Taking a deep breath, as if it could help her gain courage, Naruto trudged off to get herself a mission, walking with stiff legs along a road that treacherously tried to get away from under her feet. In front of the door of the treasured office, Uzumaki froze, staring at it stupidly, unable to raise her hand, clenched into a fist, and knock. All her determination was blown away like the wind. Her knees were shaking as when she was a good 12 years old in front of an attacking enemy shinobi. He brushed it off with his lips. The fox made himself known, gaining strength and impudence to boot. His appearances became more frequent. Uzumaki blushed. He's just a two-legged monkey who showed platonic interest in you. You attach too much importance to your exchange of saliva. The nine-tailed fox spoke with contempt and disgust. Naruto's eye twitched nervously at the word platonic. Starvation no longer seemed so harsh. After all, it was summer, and Konoha was surrounded by rich forests, berries, mushrooms, game, fish. She was a shinobi, she knew how to survive in extreme conditions. She wanted to turn around, but the door swung open in front of her nose. Before she could blink, she was brazenly dragged into the office, leaving her no chance to escape. Naruto. Wide, dark palms closed in a steel grip on her shoulders. Hashirama looked at her as if she carried divine enlightenment within herself. Ha! Ha! Ha, Hashirama? She couldn't help but stutter. In a second, she managed to survive a heart attack. Her treacherous heart almost stopped. Sorry, did I scare you? The future Shodai unclenched his hands, bashfully hiding them behind his back and smiling guiltily. Uzumaki looked around the office warily. Tobirama was not there. But she was in no hurry to relax. Suddenly, she had only to blink, as the god of thunder would appear before her eyes in his own annoying person. Where is Tobirama? She asked cautiously, turning her gaze to the dark face of the elder Senju. That's the problem. He's settled in his lab and hasn't crawled out of there for about a week, Hashirama grumbled, but the sensitive Naruto did not hide the worry hidden behind the grumbling. Because of him, I don't get out of here now, Hashirama complained. And only now, looking around the office more closely, Naruto noticed that it was in chaos. There was no sign of Tobirama's presence. There are more of them every day, I can't cope. The god of shinobi sighed heavily, struck down by the paperwork. This made him look so sad, just like a beaten lame nag. Hashirama's emotional spectrum was much wider than Madara's and Tobirama's combined. Uzumaki, looking into his sad brown eyes, wanted to feel sorry for him, feeling with all her heart the suffering of this mighty shinobi. She could not withstand such frank emotional pressure. With a convulsive sigh, she walked to the table, stepping over the scrolls scattered on the floor, and began to tidy up, quickly looking through the titles of the documents. Exactly. You helped Tobirama. Hashirama exclaimed, pleased with the state of affairs, not at all upset by the fact that Naruto was sticking her nose into Konoha's affairs, which she was not supposed to see due to her status. But Hashirama was so simple, and his faith in people was stronger than his own abilities, so he was not against it. Yes, I helped. I have a rough idea of what and how, and even more. But she did not say it out loud. The dream of becoming Hokage played its role. Then we'll sort everything out here? The elder Senju slowly backed away to the still open door, smiling broadly. Stop! Naruto barked, straightening up and looking meaningfully at Senju, who was trying to abandon her alone in this kingdom of paper chaos. As soon as she showed compassion, Hashirama took advantage of her kindness. I am not your brother. I am not going to work on a voluntary basis. I sympathize with you, but not so much that I would do this for free. Naruto demonstratively threw the scrolls at her feet and put her hands on her hips, looking expectantly at the gloomy Senju. And anyway, I came here to ask for a mission. I need something to live on. I am ready to fulfill all your conditions. The elder Senju instantly gave in. Sit down at the table. Naruto rejoiced inwardly. Everything was going as well as possible. You will write the contract. Words are words, but without a piece of paper Naruto even pulled out his chair. And she found a clean scroll. I will take on the responsibilities of distributing missions for the time being and will help sort the mail. I am ready to help in any way I can. Uzumaki brazenly listed her demands, feeling that Hashirama was more accommodating and she could calmly dictate her terms without catching the disparaging sidelong glances from some of the albinos. Okay, Hashirama immediately gave in, anticipating his quick freedom. All the important documents in my humble opinion I will bring to you or Tobirama, she warned the elder Senju not to relax. In her case, she would carry papers to him, because she had no guts to go to Tobirama after what had happened. Okay, he nodded enthusiastically, finding himself at the table with the speed of the famous Horatian. He wrote just as quickly. Advance payment. Uzumaki continued to be impudent, feeling her power over Hashirama, who was in a hurry to leave the four walls where he was surrounded only by soulless papers, a table, a chair and writing utensils. Write out the payment yourself, she finally had a conscience. 5 minutes, and in her hands was a contract sealed with her signature and Hashirama's signature, and a replenishment arrived to the lonely coin. And 10 years later, the first D-rank mission that came his way was written off by Kagami. Uchiha. And Naruto hoped that the bed was full of weeds. Naruto ate on the go, stuffing a bean pie into herself. On her shoulder hung a bag full of scrolls that urgently needed to be examined by either Hashirama or Tobirama. The second, still evil in her shaken world, fell away immediately. So Naruto got into the habit of running to the hospital, terrorizing Hashirama alone. I can't, Senju said crisply, waving Naruto away, who had blocked his path. But these are urgent documents, Uzumaki insisted, but she saw that Senju had no time for her. Or for documents. I have an urgent operation, Senju said seriously, focused and therefore gloomy. Go to Tobirama. He sent her to his brother, pushing her aside and going to the operating room. But I don't know where he is. She threw resignedly at Hashirama's retreating back. Senju's quarter. The pavilion behind the main house. He shouted back at her and disappeared. Naruto exhaled in disappointment and leaned her shoulder blades against the wall, feeling a sudden weakness. She was not ready. Throwing her head back, she banged the back of her head against the wall in despair. She should have run away on a mission, instead of compassionately helping Hashirama keep records and distribute work. Get it together! She rallied herself. Ignoring the importance of the documents was an unaffordable luxury. Hashirama's operation could drag on for a long time. Judging by his concentrated look, it was serious. It's time to face your fears. If you turn a blind eye to a problem, it doesn't mean it will resolve itself. But her knees began to shake again, and her heart fluttered anxiously in her chest. It took her about 10 minutes to gather her courage. The situation forced her to do it. And the faster she could complete the task, the better. Almost like ripping a band-aid off her skin. She needed one quick and sharp movement so that the flash of pain would be lightning fast and last only a moment, and not several hesitant and painfully slow ones. Senju dug in the lab. And that was putting it bluntly. His laboratory was a small pavilion behind his house, where he would retreat for experiments and reflection. The small, stuffy closet, filled with the smell of parchment, ink and reagents, was calming. Usually it was calming. It was the easiest and surest way to escape from reality. But now, no matter what he did, his thoughts kept returning to that fateful night that had turned his world upside down. Apparently, his world had not been turned upside down enough before. He once again crumpled the scroll with the draft of the security seal, throwing it at his feet. He would have set it on fire for greater drama, but then it would burn here in a blue flame. The floor under his feet was strewn with ruined paper. No matter how hard Tobirama tried to escape from reality, it interfered with his creation. Kissing it was as easy as pie. An impulsive impulse, a couple of seconds, and a peaceful, measured life was shattered into hundreds of fragments. Now they both had to deal with the aftermath of that kiss. There was no solution to this problem. Wherever he looked, there was impenetrable darkness. It would never be like before. Sighing heavily, the younger Senju closed his eyes, trying to immerse himself in a meditative state. He needed to throw these destructive thoughts out of his head. He needed a crystal-clear mind, not a chaotic stream of thoughts that caused self-flagellation. The familiar chakra flashed brightly in the subcortex of his consciousness. Plans were destroyed. He tensed, turning to face the door. The bearer of hot, impulsive, and so alive chakra stood on the other side, clearly not daring to enter. Tobirama prayed to all the gods he knew that this woman would not cross the threshold of his abode. He imagined her fidgeting, shifting from foot to foot, not daring to raise her fist to knock, announcing her intrusion. As if in thought, she bit her lip and looked at the barrier separating them with a hunted expression. Whatever demons had brought her here, they had better take her away from here. Before Seiju could finish his thought, his personal nightmare in reality brazenly opened the door, so hard that it seemed as if he had kicked her. "Hello?" she muttered, looking away. "Hello?" she said with exaggerated calm. His gaze was glued to her figure blocking the doorway. Sign. She took a couple of steps towards him, took her bag off her shoulder, holding it out to him. All this time, she diligently looked away, trying to feign interest in the situation. "What is this?" He glanced sideways at the linen bag, filled to capacity with something. "Documents. Hashirama can't. He sent me to you." She looked anywhere but at him. And for once she kept her distance. But Tobirama had strange feelings about it. Negative ones. And Tobirama realized what demons had brought her here. Or rather, sent her. And apparently this unspoken demon had done some mischief in his absence, since Naruto was dragging himself into his lab with documents. Senju silently stood up from his seat and walked over to her, taking the bag from her hands. Uzumaki twitched nervously, casting a frightened glance at him. Turning away, he sighed heavily, feeling regret. He liked it better when she acted carefree and naive, and not like a hunted and frightened doe. A silent tension hung between them. "Sorry," he said in a strangled voice, unable to pick up the scrolls. All his attention was focused on the nervous Uzumaki and his own miscalculation. No, it was not a miscalculation. Tobirama had screwed up big time. It was time to solve the problem that was oppressing them both, to admit their guilt and ask for forgiveness for losing control over themselves. And what will be, will be. For what? She perked up in surprise, blurting out without thinking. She understood everything. But you can't take back the words that flew off your tongue. And now Naruto is looking straight at him with a look of complete confusion. "Forgive me for the kiss," Tobirama said ingratiatingly, catching her gaze. Uzumaki immediately blushed, her eyes wide open. Unconsciously, she touched her lips. Tobirama, in turn, remembered how he touched her lips with his own, and a sudden thought pierced him. He wouldn't mind repeating it. Senju licked his suddenly dry lips, as if he could brush away the ghostly imprint of her kiss. Naruto blushed even more, breathing noisily. "I should have apologized a long time ago, and they wouldn't have played this hide-and-seek game, avoiding each other, marinating in their own worries and experiences. Adults, but they behave like children. I should have stop." Her voice gave away her emotions completely. It rang with panic. An extra reminder of the kiss, especially coming from Tobirama's mouth, threatened to make her boil with awkwardness and shame. No need to explain anything. I know everything. She rattled on, and Senju tensed up, clenching the fabric of his ordinary black pants in his fists. You weren't yourself. I wasn't myself. I don't blame you. No, I do. But Naruto was confused and hesitated. Senju, in turn, relaxed. Although why relax? If a man kisses a woman, this is no longer a hint of feelings, a frank statement. Smiling nervously, wringing her hands, she was choosing her words. Her gaze darted around the room until it landed on a dissected frog floating in formalin. Naruto frowned in concentration. It's all so complicated. She exhaled resignedly, lowering her tone. He could physically feel how much it was depressing her. But I'm so tired of all these worries. So now you'll agree that you were overly nervous, that I did something stupid as always, and we'll forget about it like a bad dream. She finished and looked at him with a hopeful look. Tobirama felt his heart squeeze unpleasantly. And the more she spoke, the worse it became. A bad dream? Was it that bad? Saint Shinigami. You can't be so petty. That's not the point. Senju was struggling with himself. Go, I'll get the documents myself, he said harshly, turning away. Tobirama, don't get me wrong, I like you. As if reading his thoughts and catching the resentment that had settled in his heart, she blurted out hastily, and then slapped her hand over his mouth. No, not in that sense, Naruto immediately explained, almost squealing. You're really cool. Sometimes arrogant, but I admire you, but… She was leading him somewhere incomprehensible. Naruto, I'll give you some friendly advice. Quiet, Senju hissed irritably, interrupting her and tensely clenching his jaw. Forgot. Enough excuses, I got it all. Kami. What nonsense am I talking about? Naruto slapped herself on the forehead and backed towards the exit before she confused him. And herself too. That's it, I'm leaving, she made peace, feeling that she had angered Tobirama with her incoherent speech. That's it. Forgotten. Let's erase that day, night from our memory, and those 5 minutes. Before leaving, she blurted out, putting an end to this incident. Senju exhaled convulsively. Life goes on. But it didn't get any easier. Her words about how cool he was, how she liked him, and in general, how much she admired him, were stuck in his head like some kind of mantra. So what should he do next? Naruto would drive him crazy. Chapter 36. Woman, have you ever thought about why a kiss with Tobirama excites you more than Zetsu's death? Kurama lazily opened his eye, looking boredly at his Jinchuriki. Uzumaki had been sitting opposite him for an hour, thinking hard about something. Her face would darken and then turn pale. Sometimes she would shake her head, clearly brushing away unknown, unpleasant thoughts. He was tired of pretending to be asleep. And his unfortunate cell needed to be cheered up, otherwise it was unusually thoughtful and silent. Kurama! She barked at Kyubi, flashing an angry look. No! Well, I had to knock her off her train of thought? And in such a brazen manner, too. By the way, she was trying to forget about this incident here, and an integral part of her decided to raise this uncomfortable topic. And anyway, she shouldn't be thinking about this. More serious problems were looming on the horizon. I've come to terms with Kuro's death. Zetsu, just accept this. Or better yet, enjoy it. No war for the sake of Kagaya's resurrection, and a thoroughbred lover, too, the red evil of elemental proportions spoke in a casual tone. Do you have extra tails? Or a tongue? Choose, Uzumaki was seething, snorting angrily. The joy of Kurama slowly but surely recovering, returning to its former glory, was fading. You know, you need more than just kisses, the fox said meaningfully, already opening his second eye. Naruto gritted her teeth, turning purple with indignation. Mito and Kushina found mating with their males very relaxing. And look at you, how tense you are, your facial nerve is pinched, your eye is twitching, your heart is playing up, your nerves are giving out. Irritation covered her head. Naruto simply choked on the demon's unheard of impudence, unable to find the right words to express everything she thought about it. We'll have some mischief somewhere else, when I can't hide you anymore. Your chakra is leaking more and more. She decided not to comment on Kyubi's outrageous proposal. It was a disgusting provocation. So she decided to say everything that was starting to bother her. By the way, that's exactly what she was thinking about until some furry monsters knocked her off her feet. The time is approaching when she will need to clearly explain why there is a mythical monster inside her. And the first one to feel her specific feature will be just that Tobirama. Our chances for a carefree and long life can increase if you mate well and qualitatively with your pale moth. It wouldn't hurt him either. He's so twitchy. Kurama steadfastly continued to follow the course of the topic he had raised, stretching his black-fanged mouth into a semblance of a malicious grin. Although nature did not give him the ability to smile and grin, his creator rewarded him with the ability to express emotions with his voice. And his Jinchuriki, no matter how hopeless she was, learned to recognize his feelings not only with the help of intonation, but also intuitively. Naruto's eyes popped out of his head from his impudence, and his jaw smoothly slid down. Not only his cheeks were crimson, but his face, ears and neck. She was so angry that she couldn't put a word together. She simply looked at him with silent fury, searching for the strength to answer. Censored. Your brain has split. What are you proposing to me here? Naruto screamed, furious, her voice breaking, her face turning a deep red. Do you have any better suggestions? He asked seriously, crossing his paws and lowering his muzzle on top, indicating that he was ready to consider her suggestions. If he had eyebrows, he would have arched them questioningly. But definitely not this. She protested furiously. Of course, she had no ideas on this matter. Telling the truth was not an option. They wouldn't believe it. It sounded too fantastic. Lying, they wouldn't believe it either. They were all complete paranoids here. Endless wars had left their mark, forcing them to be wary of everything and everyone. So they had to find an acceptable alternative. What the fox was proposing was laughable nonsense. If she had time, Naruto would do his best, and even more, to make them believe in her and understand that she was just like them. She cared about Konoha with all her heart. But time was merciless and cruel to her. Kurama suddenly began to gain chakra. Just a little more, and he would be the same. And hiding such a red nine-tailed cockroach from the pale mug, Tobirama would become very problematic. The Night Aim's sensory abilities were so amazingly unique that he would detect him in no time. If he hadn't already begun to suspect that something was wrong with her. Amazing and unique, Kurama drawled in a thin voice, mimicking Naruto. The Jinchuriki's expression twisted as if someone had put bugs in her mouth. Don't get into my head! Sometimes she cursed that she and Kurama were so united that they were one whole. And often the echoes of her thoughts were in the palm of his hand. You think too loudly, Kyubi snorted contemptuously. I'm worried about you. Uzumaki was offended, puffing out her cheeks and sticking out her lower lip. And you, manipulate your pale moth like that? The demon was offended, arrogantly lifting his nose and... You are trying to save yourself. You humans are very sentimental. And moth is no exception. You just need to know what levers to press. Get the moth's recognition, you will have protection in the face of Madara and Hashirama. He will be in the first row to try to cut me down, she said sadly, tired of arguing with her demon. The words she spoke blew such a dank doom that her heart became bitter. You are hopeless! Kurama rolled his eyes to the bottomless dark ceiling of the Naruto catacombs. He was ready to marry you because you were caught in the same bed. Doesn't that make you think? He takes traditions too seriously, Naruto muttered, hugging herself. It wasn't she who was hopeless, but the situation as a whole. He kissed you, the fox spat out in disgust, snorting contemptuously. As if it was Tobirama who kissed him, and not Naruto. Because he was nervous? Naruto said uncertainly. Then, having left Tobirama, she had accepted his silent agreement that it was because of stress, but the fox, having brought up the topic, made her rethink it. Now she doubted it was just convenient for her to believe the reason she had come up with herself. She hadn't let Senju speak out. Hearing the truth was unusually scary. The fox clicked his jaws in irritation. It looked scary. Yes, the demon in general looked scary. But not for Naruto. Bipeds, you love to dramatize so much? And you, a clot of chakra, as if you understand emotions and feelings better than shrinks, Naruto snorted skeptically. She thought, so to speak, how to save them from inevitable exposure. And here, in addition to delusional ideas, they also gave her a free psychotherapy session. Not very good. I sat in Mito's body for decades and a couple of decades in Kushina. I absorbed their feelings and emotions with chakra, so I know more about feelings than you do, the demon said importantly and closed his eyes, turning his muzzle away from Naruto. The conversation was exhausted. For the fox. And Naruto was not going to raise this topic without him. A terrible plan. Stupid talk. She stamped her foot like an angry child. Her eyes burned with tears of desperate anger. It's just that Kurama is also in despair, that's why he's talking nonsense about mating with pale moths. And he's not a moth. It's Tobirama. She angrily protested one last time about the offensive nickname that Kurama had come up with for Senju, and disappeared from her own subconscious, returning to reality, where she would soon have to go to work. To work, where she would certainly come face to face with a pale moth. Tobirama. Tobirama moi. She irritably corrected herself, because this absolutely ignoble nickname had stuck to her. Otherwise, she'll call him a moth out loud, that would be awkward. And is kissing you at night a trick? Fox drawled sarcastically, mocking Naruto for worrying about insignificant trifles. So he hastened to remind him of more awkward moments. Naruto gritted her teeth, got out of bed and, ignoring Fox's request to rethink the reasons for the kiss, ran headlong into the shower, mentally humming a nursery rhyme about tailed beasts of her own composition. If only not to think about M.O. Tobirama. Tobirama began to deeply regret leaving the residence, leaving everything to his brother. It would have been better if he had not followed such an uncharacteristic weakness, and had not hidden in the darkness of his own laboratory from the consequences of the stupidest act in his life. Not only had Hashirama appointed Uzumaki to sort through papers and distribute people among missions in his place, Naruto almost secretly appointed Madara Uchiha as the head of the village. You wouldn't dare! Tobirama muttered through his teeth, lowering his palm over the scroll where Hashirama had almost finished writing Madara's name. The younger Senju's face was distorted with anger. He managed to enter the office in time, as well as to glance at the document, going behind Hashirama's back to more easily spy on what his brother was so happy about. The elder's happy face was alarming, because he could come up with something stupid that could bring unpredictable results. His passion for gambling alone was worth something. Part of Konoha's treasury was replenished in this way. On the one hand, it was good, on the other, a very dubious way of earning money. It turned out that his suspicions about his brother's very cheerful mood were not without meaning. The daimyo pointed out the need for an immediate appointment of the head of the village. And the scroll fell straight into the hands of Hashirama, who apparently hadn't dumped all the work on Naruto's deceptively fragile shoulders. He decided that he had the right to appoint Madara himself, without Madara himself. And Tobirama, who stepped in for his brother, helping him make his dream come true, taking almost all the organizational matters onto his mighty shoulders. I don't want to do this, Hashirama admitted honestly, raising his head. He froze with his hand raised above the document. A drop of ink fell from the tip of his brush onto Tobirama's palm. I have enough leadership in the clan. And the future is in the hospital. Just not Madara. Senju Jr., taking advantage of the opportunity, took the scroll, crumpling it with his palm, taking it from under Hashirama's nose. Tobirama was categorical on this issue. Why? Hashirama asked. Tobirama decided that the question was purely rhetorical. His brother knew perfectly well where the dog was buried. And he was not the only one. The hostility between him and his older brother's best friend was so open and serious that everyone knew about it. But looking into his brother's eyes, where sincere misunderstanding splashed, the albino sighed in disappointment. Yes, because he does not resolve issues diplomatically. He was ready to exterminate the Tsuchigumo clan in the name of revenge. Tobirama could give 100 reasons, but chose a more recent one. Madara was undoubtedly strong, and sometimes it seemed that he was much smarter than his best friend, but his bloodthirstiness outweighed all these qualities, as did his exorbitant egoism. You yourself persuaded me to give him the scroll. Hashirama crossed his arms over his chest and leaned back in his chair, looking at his brother with a crooked smile. And he did not do it in the end. Think for yourself. Let him send the severed head or let him go lynch the entire clan? Tobirama suppressed the urge to roll his eyes. His choice was based on a simple truth, the choice of the lesser evil. Hashirama's naivety was sometimes astounding. He couldn't understand banal things. We could have allowed him either one nor the other, Hashirama shrugged casually. In his opinion, everything was resolved very simply. Do you even understand that you are contradicting yourself? Appointing a person as head whose every decision will have to be questioned and disputed, Tobirama was angry. His brother was blinded by his friendship with Madara. Tobirama felt that the argument could become useless shaking of air. But it was worth trying to reason with his older and sheepishly stubborn brother. It was not worth it, it was necessary. The future of the village was at stake. I can also make wrong decisions that will need to be challenged, and the head of the Senju clan raised an eyebrow questioningly, expecting an argument to counter his words. Hashirama is also a person and he is capable of making mistakes. Anyone is capable of making mistakes. Let's create a council of elders. I will help you, Tobirama suggested almost without thinking. So the council of elders will help Madara. And you too, Hashirama retorted. But such a prospect did not please Tobirama, and he looked at his brother very expressively. To be an assistant to the Uchiha Madara? Absurd. He'd rather drown himself in his own suetun than run errands for the red-eyed one. It's your idea! Tobirama unclasped his arms folded across his chest and circled his brother, trying to pressure him, forcing him to accept the most adequate solution to this issue in his opinion. Not only mine. Madara wanted this too, the elder Senju stubbornly insisted, not giving up his position in the face of the younger's arguments. Madara is good in the role of a forced evil, but not a fair leader. The albino was ready to defend his interests, and the interests of the village to the last. He would not make concessions in this serious matter even to his own brother. No matter what it cost him. Senju always knew how to prioritize. You underestimate him. The Uchiha stood up for him. Hashirama, who was also ready to defend his opinion to the last. And at the same time some freedom, which the appointment of Uchiha as the head of the village promised him. Madara's honor was also at stake. Still, this frightening and powerful shinobi is not as scary as he wants to seem. You overestimate him. Tobirama felt that this would drag on for a long time. Hashirama did not see at all how angry and bloodthirsty Uchiha was. He also did not notice that not only the villagers, but also his own clansmen were trying to avoid Madara, clearly feeling fear in front of him. Naruto alone did not care about Madara. For some time, she treated him with caution and apprehension, but not now. No wonder she is not a local. And it is as if she is sick in the head. These are demons. He started thinking about Naruto again. And this is in the middle of an important argument. That's exactly what I know what Madara is really like. Hashirama raised his voice, starting to get angry. His younger brother's bias was irritating. Although Tobirama and Madara couldn't stand each other for reasons that were clear to everyone, the brother could use his brain and put aside his hatred and look at the situation from a different angle. It was a shame that Tobirama, because of his own vanity and pride, did not want to look beyond his nose. He, and everyone around him, saw only the image that Madara created for himself, fencing himself off from suffering. All this was a skillfully thought-out illusion. But no one, absolutely no one wanted to see beyond their nose. Except for Hashirama himself and Naruto. He was tired of rushing between two fires in an attempt to smooth out the sharp edges of their relationship. And all this prejudice of Tobirama at the moment angered him so much that Hashirama was ready to switch to another language, the language of strength. A bloodthirsty aura of ki spread in the air. Hashirama drilled Tobirama with an offended and displeased look. The younger Senju did not give up his position, looking at the elder with chagrin. The cold and suppressing ki of the albino met with the living and suffocating one of Hashirama. The overwhelming tension emanating from the two powerful shinobi threatened to reach its peak and spill out into a fight. Uzumaki slowly walked up the stairs, climbing up, lost in her own thoughts. Her head was a complete mess. The problems with Kurama and Tobirama were so tightly mixed together that she was confused in her own feelings, not to mention her thoughts. She was thrown from one extreme to another, just like on a swing. Before Naruto had time to think over the problem with the Kyuubi, Tobirama suddenly appeared, who became the stumbling block of all her problems. Senju Jr. basically became one big problem. She decided to omit the moment that she herself and her own stupidity were the initiator of the problem in the person of Tobirama. She herself is the source of all her problems. But here and now they have the face of the second Hokage. On the last step, she almost tripped, hearing the echo of arguing voices. It made her freeze listening. Her sensitive hearing caught the voices of Tobirama and Hashirama, and the name Madara slipping out every now and then. None of her business. She turned around in order to go down and not interfere in the conversation of two shinobi gods. She did not want to get caught in the crossfire. Halfway down the stairs, she stopped when the recoil of their ki pierced her back. The tension spread in a thick wave along the corridor. Someone else's chakra tickled her nerves, activating the shinobi instincts in her. Naruto, the dispute between two brothers is none of your business, none of yours, she said out loud to herself, raising her leg over the next step. You just need to take it and leave. Not stick your nose into other people's feuds. Even if she was pushed to do so by good intentions. It was wiser and true not to interfere. But feelings demanded adventure. And the egocentrism of feats. And preventing an impending fight, judging by the heavy and stifling atmosphere on the second floor of the residence, and the few offensive words left before it, could be written off as a feat. Uzumaki immediately turned around and moved to the door of the office where the Senju brothers were hiding. There she froze, fearlessly leaning against the door, brazenly eavesdropping. Maybe she wouldn't have to interfere. They would quarrel, bicker, and then peacefully scatter in different directions. On the agenda of the quarreling brothers was Madara and the post of the village leader. Uzumaki was taken aback, her mouth open. History was being made before her eyes, almost eyes. She was overcome with goosebumps. And not because the pressure of the ki instantly increased several times, but the instinct of self-preservation hinted that it was time to run. Here and now she forgot why she had crept up to the door, using all her ninja skills for stealth. The situation between the brothers was threatening to get out of control. Naruto hadn't had time to really think through her next steps. And to be honest, she hadn't thought at all about what would happen after she had brazenly barged in during their argument. Or maybe I'll be the head of the village? Naruto jumped out from behind the door like a bijou from a snuff box, standing between the angry and agitated brothers. The tension gave way to general bewilderment. The sensations were akin to those she had experienced during the Chunin selection exam, the stage led by Marino Ibiki. The sparkling anger of red and brown eyes crossed on her. I love Konoha with all my soul and body, and I'm ready to take on the burden of rule. I promise to be a wise and fair leader. Uzumaki spoke earnestly, looking alternately at the gloomy faces of Hashirama and Tobirama, ready at any second for a potential attack. The first face immediately brightened. The stupor from Uzumaki's unexpected appearance, and even more unpredictable statement passed. Hashirama laughed. The nervous tension came out with a laughter. Naruto blinked stupidly, looking at the laughing Senju Sr. She should have been offended that her words were ridiculed, but she felt that this was not the reason he was laughing. Tobirama did not share his brother's feelings, becoming increasingly angry. She overheard enough to understand the precedent of their quarrel. On the one hand, she was for Tobirama, because Uchiha and Hokage? Yes, Konoha can drown in blood with such a terrible ruler, but on the other, Madara is no worse than Hashirama. Uchiha loved the village no less, and perhaps more, than Hashirama. It's just that Uchiha's love sometimes gets out of control, becoming a natural disaster. You were eavesdropping, Tobirama accused her, rewarding her with an angry look. She also had the audacity to interfere in their argument. He missed the moment when she snuck up, being completely absorbed in swearing. The whole village was eavesdropping on you. They should have lowered their voices, Uzumaki grinned in response. So who do you think is more suitable for the post of village leader, me or Madara? The reaction of the elder Senju was different. He simply took and dragged her into their verbal battles. Her opinion, Tobirama. They're not asking you, she glared angrily at the albino covered in red spots of anger. You are all perfectly suited to the role of village leader. You are the strongest, she pointed her finger at Hashirama. But sometimes very soft and kind. And you are a genius, she turned to Tobirama, whose candidacy was not even considered. But you are too biased, and you have serious trust issues, she expressed her opinion with utmost honesty. Madara is a gloomy guy. And he looks like if you stick your finger in his hand he will rip it off. But he is just. How to say this, Naruto thought. Madara is truly evil. Insane and unbridled. But what made him so was the desire to achieve peace at any cost. She just forgot about the motives of his evil deeds. His goal was noble, only the methods for achieving it were lame on both legs. It's a defensive reaction. Inside, he is the same as you. Feels the same as you. Loves as you do, if not more. Worries. Wants the best. Tobirama looked at her like a traitor. Hashirama like a savior. Another round of the argument was brewing. More violent and destructive than the first. But the war has left its mark on you all. So you are all a little crazy. So I offer myself. Naruto smiled from ear to ear, trying to smooth out the unpleasant effect that her fiery speech was causing. Well, how would you describe yourself? Hashirama looked at Naruto with interest. And why not, his gaze said. Hashirama, are you serious now? Tobirama caught the train of thought of his older brother. If only someone would replace him. Well, it is. Uzumaki was confused, realizing that her maneuver for the sake of defusing the situation was no longer perceived as a maneuver. And the offer to make her the head was considered seriously. She kind of joked. No, it was her dream, but then. Hopeless, who knows little about politics. Tobirama described her without mincing words. Of course, Senju understood that he was impermissibly insulting her, and Naruto was smart in places. But her intellectual merits paled in comparison to her outrageous crudeness and excessive emotionality. Not to mention the lack of a banal culture of behavior. But my emotional spectrum is not like that of a kanai. Uzumaki was offended, pursing her lips in displeasure. We'll decide later who will become the leader of the village. Together with Madara. Hashirama put an end to the argument, getting up from his chair and freeing up Tobirama's place. It's time for me to go. And the shinobi god disappeared into the haze of Shunshin, without waiting for his brother's answer. Uzumaki sighed with relief, feeling a sudden weakness in her legs. All this time, she did not notice that she was tense to the limit, and her heart beat in her chest like a wounded bird, as if she had been on a battlefield. Tobirama, measuring her with an unreadable look, turned sharply and walked out of the office. Thank you, Naruto! You're just in time, Naruto! Uzumaki muttered under her breath, offended by the fact that no one appreciated her efforts. The brothers parted peacefully. They didn't paint each other's faces. It would be possible to show at least a drop of gratitude for her skills in smoothing out diplomatic conflicts. Sighing with disappointment, she took a thick stack of papers from the table and went to do good deeds further. Since Tobirama crawled out of the lab, it meant that she could leave the residence to finally conduct a survey and compile a complete list of capable shinobi. Konoha. In order to subsequently correctly compose teams and increase the average life expectancy of an ordinary ninja.